Okay, we'll move further. Then several questions arises out of materials on technology described and discussed here. One of them arises from the general shared European opinions. At time asserted that the Indian manufacturers of iron and steel, and in other instantly on other commodities or parishioners in their possessions, could not have had any knowledge of theory of this operation, though such opinions essentially oriented from the ethnocentric view and inclinations. Even the British Royal Society does not seem to have remained untouched through such inclinations. Referring to the letter of Mr. Scott and Votary, it quoted him as having written that it admits on a harder temper than anything known in that part of India. What Dr. Scott had actually stated was that it appears to admit of a harder temper than anything we are acquainted with. As in obvious, uh, Dr. Scott, we implied we in Europe, but as this must have cement inadmissible in the page of philosophy transactions. The observations got alerted to then anything known in that part of India of the society to which such observers belonged and were not in their essence derived from the subject observed and described. These as were undisputed, but most practitioners of professions which they have learnt after a long apprenticeship and in which their essential job is to respect even more perfectly what they have done before, never required as sudden possesses such knowledge. The possessions of such knowledge and its development and refinement is at all time the function of separate though interlinked group. Such divisions between the practitioners and theoreticians is currently more evident than ever before. It is possible that link between the practitioners of the various technology techniques, possessions, and professors of the theoretical knowledge related to them had largely snapped in India by the end of 18th century. It is even probable that though not altogether snapped, such a break had begun to take place centuries earlier. This, however, in a view which cannot be uh, determined by merely conjecture. Its sustenance required detailed studies of Indian techniques and processes as they operated over several countries up until the early 19th. So, whatever like different philosophers are there, different technicals are there, and professors are there. They have given a different kind of theoretical knowledge based on given by the Britishers only, and they have trying to snap our whatever actual facts are there, and they are giving their own feedbacks like we don't have this much, we don't have this, we don't have this, so that our full history will be like that only. So that's why. Then even if these links have already snapped, but the practices had continued, it is very probable that in a changed political climate resulting, for instance, from the success of early 18th century resurgences, they could have been restored and fresh interaction between the practitioners and the surviving professors with their knowledge of theoretical aspect or even forced screw. Then another question that arises from the above discussion on the manufacture of Indian iron and steel is that if the manufacturing process was so very superior and widespread throughout the country, why did they disappear? So far, our knowledge of such widespread manufacturing has itself been very scanty. Therefore, answer to such a question at present can merely uh, be tentative. The disappearance seemed to have resulted mainly from the large scale of economic breakdown resulting from hostile state policies. So, like different state policies, whatever in British's time, they have made it like that, that individual whatever we have the technology earlier in our villages, so that they can easily break it, so that we will be like more and more poor state. We will get a more poor state. They can easily rule on us. Okay, so from about 1800 onwards, India was to be treated as a consumer of British manufacturers. Yet, some of the British in India did visualize the undertaking of large scale of production of iron steel in India. But even they, when they came forth with such plan, were at great pains in stating that such production would in no way injure the production of Britain or consumers of British iron in India. Even this type of propositions was, however, difficult for the British government to contemplate. For example, reply to an earlier application for setting up such work in the Bengal area, and the London Authority in 1814 stated, but as we entertain strong doubt as to the policy of encouraging the prosecutions of such work, to an extent we direct that no further expense may be incurred. So they have different step by step they have broken our state policies, our nation policies, so that our all whatever works will be there which are happening from so many years earlier itself in India, that they can break, and they can make us like a more and more poor. Okay, so that will be more easily they can rule on us. So many other aspects of science and technology are not at all referred to in the account, which are reproduced in the following pages: textiles, garments, then horticulture technique, and or the breeding of animals are amongst those omitted aspects. The design or construction of goats and other seafaring vessels are also not referred to. A mention in this respect may, however, be made of an observations made by the Soli and the less Hindus, introducing the 40s or so sketches of boats and river vessels in use in North India in 1719. He observed the English attentive to everything which related to naval architectures have borrowed from the Hindus many informative improvements which they have adapted with success to their own shaping. The committing on Indian rowing as early 18th century observed remarked, their watermen row after a different manner from our. They move the oar with their feet, and their hand served instead of hypothetical or roller on which it turned. So they don't know exactly that the rollers part also in Britain that time. So they have learned it through India, in Hindus only. So it is also an as in nothing at all in such in known as various accounts reproduced in the in this volume. Chapter 1, 2, 5, 6 dealing with astronomy and mathematics are perhaps known to many concerned scholars. The accounts dealing with the manufacture of paper and composition of Madras mortarage and iron works at Ramana Kapeti are possibly known to be a still wider circle. Even the practice of inoculation against the smallpox is known to have existed in ancient time in India. For according to one modern writer, preventive inoculation against the smallpox, which was practiced in China from the 11th century, apparently came from India. Sometimes also seem to know about the manufacture of iron and steel in Salem, though the writings among about it by Campbell, the assistant surveyor general, Madras. Then Renard himself seemed to have been fairly well informed about the export of woodwork to England and other countries through he leaves in this time volume. But all the knowledge among the scholars and prominent writers on Indian economics has not so far created any general awareness of the teaching and practice of these science and technology, and questioning the prevailing hypothesis of the 18th century being the darkest period in India, and etc. The reason of the lack of appropriate awareness or the prevailing indifference are manifolds. Primarily, the responsible for such situations lie with the system of education, which has prevailed in independent India, which by nurturing indifference, even contempt for everything indigenous, then effectively block such iniquities. The intellectual basis of the concern and the indifference which began to grow around the close of 18th century in perhaps best illustrated by the article of algebra in Encyclopedia Britannica in its 8th edition 1850 discussing Indian algebra. It referred to the review of Professor John Playfair of Broke and work on Indian algebra and observed. This last article, published in 1870s, may be supposed to contain the mature opinion of one of the most able and we must say most candid inquiry into the history of Hindu mathematical science. There is here certainly an abatement of this first confidence in the opinion of Bailey of the Indian astronomy, and a corresponding caution in his own opinion as to the antiquity of the mathematical science. The very remote origin of the Indian astronomy had been strongly questioned by many of this country and also on the continent, particularly by the Laplace, also by Delampre in the histories. Astronomy, Anatomy, Tony, IP 400. And again, history D. Do many age, do mowing age. Then discovery, prevalence. This all they have written in Germany. I think Germany or in France, which we speak strictly on its algebra. Then article added, and in the country, Professor Listen in his very learned work on the philosophy of arithmetic, page number 225 and 226, called the Leelavati, a very poor performance containing merely a few scanty precepts couched in the observed memorial verses. Then Playfair observations alluded to on his occasions while differing from the view of lesson, etc. Then expressed some scholar as specimen of the Indian capability in mathematical science. He had said, among many subjects of wonder which the study of these ancient fragments cannot fail to suggest, it is not one of the least that algebra has existed in India and has been cultivated for more than 1200 years without any single improvement or in addition to any material discovery. The work of the ancient teachers of science has been commented on, elucidated and explained with skill and learning, but no new method has been invented, nor any new principle introduced. The method of resolving indeterminate problem that constitute the biggest merit of their analytical science were known to Brahmagupta the hardly less accurately than a Bashankara, and they appears to have been understood even by Aryabhata, more ancient by several centuries than either. A long series of scholarship display in their annotations great acuteness, intelligence and judgment, but they never pass far beyond the line drawn by their own predecessors, which probably seem even to those learned and intelligent men as the barrier within which it was confined. In India, indeed, everything seemed equal and insurmountable. The truth and error are equally accused in the performance of station where has been where they have once occupied. The politicians, the laws in the regions, the science and the manner seem all nearly the same as at the remote period of which the history extends. It is because of the power which brought about a certain degree of civilization and advancedly science to a certain height has either ceased to act or has met with such a resistance as it be barely able to overcome, or it is because of the discoveries with the Hindus or in possession of all and invincible from some other inventing or some ancient peoples of whom no memory remain but some of their attenuations in science. So they have written whatever things just for giving a different aspects of Indians, okay, and whatever texts they have given us, but just for destroying our this best efforts which we have like doing it from earlier itself. Okay, so the old world will understand that Indians don't have anything, they are just disgracing in our behalf. So the choice of this passage during the 1850s by the Encyclopedia Britannica was in keeping with the sentiment of the period, but the 24 pages unsigned article in the Edinburgh Review, November 1817, from which this spectacle passage is taken, and also said many other things. Early in the article, Flavor observed the commentary of the Vijay Ganita, bearing the date of 1602, contained a full exposition of sense with the complete demonstration of rules which in the manner of Ganesha and there in scholastics and still later date who appear to have flourished about the year 1621. If therefore it is true that the Hindus of the present times understanding nothing of their scientific book, the decline of knowledge among them must have been very rapid, as it is plain that at the distance of less than 2 centuries from the present time, the light of science was shining in India with considerable luster. So they have declined knowledge. Okay, so they have declined our Indian people knowledge by writing such kind of text. Okay, so we will not be able to know like before just 2 or 3 centuries back how we are there and everything. So in 18th century they are doing all these kind of things. So in 19th century we totally vanished, like how we are there and everything like that. So proceeding further, while deploring the lack of analysis even in the Vijay Ganita, he noted that Brahmagupta had given a solution that appears quite general concerning intermittent problems, and he observed the solution then of a very difficult problem by an Indian algebraist more than 1200 years ago, in such as can we or those of two of the mathematicians, the most distinguished of genius and invention which Europe could boast of very having seen at the end of the 18th century, and dismissing that the finding of such solutions by Brahmagupta may have been due to change. He added, there are iniquities where change and accident have greater influence, and were a man of very inferior genius and knowledge may make great discoveries. But the studies we are treating of those here is not of that number. It is one where no one find who does not know how to search, and where there is no reward but for intense thought and practice and perpetual inquiries. So whatever, like we are not at that much of in a researching mode and all. Only few people's having that kind of mindset. So only those people they will research. Otherwise, all the peoples they will just whatever text and whatever things they got it from outside world or from the school, colleges, and other peoples. They will understand and they will go through, and they will just keep on thinking about that thing only. They will not do it their own some researches. Okay, so that's why whatever text they have given to us, based on that only we thought that whatever it's there, it's truth only, and keep on we are just thinking that everything whatever we taught from our school and college onwards, everything was correct, but it was actually other way around. Given the doubt of academic playfair, deep place, and deliberate, etc., as well as the supporting role of the fast multiplying tribe of the original scholarships amongst the servants of British authority in India, including those amongst the missionaries. Macaulay's verdict on Indian science and learning was inevitable. Only Macaulay expresses such doubt and contempt with great drama and bombast. So Macaulay, you know that Rajesh has told about him and in his lectures, because he is the main key who destroyed our this science and technology and all other aspects of India, like what we are there and what we are actually doing, and now he totally destroyed the thinking of all Indians, and he told to every people of the world that in Europe only they are doing it all these things by inventing themselves in 18th century, and that is highly impossible. Okay, so these kind of things he has produced. So he's a we can say he's having great drama guy and bombast type of guy, but what he said in his minute of 2 February 1835 was shared fully not only by the then British Government General of India, Bantic. I gave my entire concurrence to the sentiments expressed in this minute, but practically by every other learned and powerful European, rendering to the ointment. Macaulay observed, I have never found one amongst them Who could deny that a single shelf of the good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia? The instinct supervisory of the Western literature is indeed fully admitted by those members of the committees who support the Oriental plan of education. And then he added, it will hardly be disputed, I suppose, that the department of literature in which Eastern writers stand highest in poetry, and I certainly never met with an Orientalist who ventured to maintain that Arabic and Sanskrit poetry could be compared to that of great European nations. But when we pass from work of imaginations to work in which facts are recorded and general principles investigated, the superiority of European belong absolutely immeasurable. It is, I believe, no exaggeration to say that all the historical informations which has been collected from all the book written in the Sanskrit language is then valuable than what may be found in the most poetry adjustments used to preparatory schools in England. And then in very branch of physical and moral philosophy, the relative position of two nations is nearly the same. Concluding, Macaulay refused to associate themselves with any support or assistance to Indian learning and declined. If one on the other hand, it be a opinion of the government that the present system ought to remain unchanged, I beg that I may be permitted to retire from the chair of committee. I feel that I would not be of the smallest use to them. I feel also that I should be lending my countenance to what I firmly believe to be a mere delusions. I believe that the present system tends not to accelerate the progress of truth, but to delay the natural death of expiring errors. Then I conceive that we have to present no right to the respectable name of board of public instructions. We we are a board or wasting the public money for printing book which are the less value than the paper on which they are printed was while it was blank, for giving artificial encouragement to absurd history, absurd metaphysics, absurd physics, absurd theology, for raising up a breed of scholars who find their scholarship and encouragement, and women who live on the public while they are receiving their educations, and those education is so uttered useless to them that when they have received it they must neither starve or live or on the public all the rest of their lives in entertaining these opinions. I have naturally desirous to decline all share in the responsibility of body which you unless it alter its whole mode of proceeding. I must consider not merely as useless but as positively noxious. So these all remarks he has given. Then additional to that he told that remarks, observations, threats and declamations like those quoted above have shaped all the writings and teachings about India and more or less continue to do so in the manner and directions indicated by Macaulay, and by his more powerful precursors like Williams, Wilberforce, and James Mills. And ignorance, apathy, and utter mental confusion, particularly about life and society in the 18th century, not only in India but in West Europe itself, are in the natural product of such writing and teachings. So he has given in his lecture all about what is they are having in the Europe and whatever is there in India and all. So he has declared everything one step by step. The doubt and declamations of Playfair, Laplace, and Macaulay, etc., however, are not the sole cause of this ignorance and apathy. These seem to arise partly from such deeper issues with pertaining to the conflicting hypothesis about state and society. The 17th, 18th, and 19th century European view of society and those of science, technology, politics, etc., was dismaterially at variance with the view about them held by non-European societies during the same period. Consequently, the science and technology of the non-European world also had different themes and developments to those of Europe. Further, in countries like India, their organizations are in tune with their other discerning politics, and there was no seem to make their tool and workplace unnecessarily gigantic and grandiose. Smallness the and simplicity of the construction, as of the iron and steel furnaces or the drill plough, was in the fact due to social and political maturity, as well as arising from the understanding of principle and processes involved. Instead of being crude, the processes and tool of 18th century India appear to have developed from a great deal of sophistications in theory and heightened sense of aesthetic. So it is in such context that a man like Voltaire considered Indian famous of its law and science, and deployed a mounting European reoccupations, both individual and national, of those in India with the amassing of immense fortunes. This quest of riches intensified the struggle and plunder, etc., during his own time, and made him remarks: if the Indian had remained unknown to the Tartars and to us, they would have been happiest people in the world. Looking back at what has happened since he wrote these lines, and Voltaire seemed to have been very perspective in this judgment. But the whole world, if such contacts had not occurred, would have been very difficult, not only in political and society, but also in science and technology. Speculations about what it may have been though fascinating or far beyond the scope of this volume. So a lot of things are there which Dharampal is not able to produce in this, because it's beyond the scope of this volume. Okay, so a lot of things he tried to mention. He mentioned the same text which is he got it in some other library, and so same thing he has quoted in his book, this Indian Science and Technology. By that you can see like how the peoples are there in Europe that time, and in India how that things are going on. The question yet remains, why have science and technology, which seem to have been very much alive about the 8 to 10 generations back, and being whole eclipsed So answer about the cause of such an eclipse are very complex. Some of them are also till there in systematic and detailed research available about Indian science and society, largely speculative. A few them may, however, be suggested here. First, in the related to economic breakdown of India during 1750 and 1900. So we have argued about the nature and intensify of exploitations of the agricultural and manufacturing population, or about the question of what happened to the money and good extorted. The 50% of the gross agriculture product compulsory taken as governmental land revenue in the good example, but there can be no dispute that the breakdown of the economy was overwhelming and total. The science or the technology can survive intact such catastrophe. So whatever things they have done it, it's a very different way, very difficult to tell also. They are like it's whatever the things are there we are having science and technology was very nice before that, and they have destroyed it once they came, like 50% of the gross agriculture products compulsorily taken by government. So whatever like we will produce, 50% will be taken by the government. So that is not good actually. That is like they are forcing them to be like poor. So that is happened actually. So the second point related to the contrary nature of a new state fiscal system when compared with the indigenous system or system prevailing at the commencement of the European impact. It seemed that the indigenous budgeting of state revenues, whether for a larger or smaller political entities, and though various inbuilt devices, left the overwhelming proportions of revenue at the focal level. The British created focal system, on the other hand, doubled and tripled the rate of various assessments, and it effectively brought all people under this wing, taking away the whole willingness and propositions to the central execute as well as to the metropolis and place above them. Studies neglect and contempt added to the economic breakdown and the transformation of the fiscal system. This is on my mind completely, the unrooting and eliminating the indigenous science and technology, not only for the society but from Indian memory itself. So they want to eliminate. They are working on eliminating and unrooting the indigenous science and technology, not only from the society also, like from Indian society they are removing it, and from their memories also, we should not be like knowing how better we are there in our science and technology that time. So that's the main thing they want to do it. Finally, the notion that all these sciences and technologies have wholly disappeared in not altogether true. Remnant of many still exist and continues to be of use, but at the most neglected and improvement level. The instant it is said that some aspects of indigenous plastic surgery were being practiced till fairly recently in place as far apart on Kangra and Janudra. So these two places still that plastic surgery practice are still going on in India when he written this document. Okay, so there are practical. If you will go to the villages, still like you will be able to find out so many things, which you can see how we are still having the practice of our great ancient knowledges. But in the textbooks and all the memory part also, they are tried to eliminating that.